Shady Sands, the town that built a republic. When the bombs fell in 2077, the west coast of North America was consumed by the same apocalyptic fire that scorched the rest of the world. Cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Bakersfield became wastelands of ash and ruin. Yet amid the devastation, survivors clung stubbornly to life. For most of the wasteland, the next 2 centuries were an age of chaos, warlords carving out petty empires, raiders hunting the weak, and tribes scratching out survival in the dust. Civilization seemed gone forever. But in the middle of what had once been Northern California, something extraordinary happened. There, in a humble settlement called Shady Sands, the idea of rebuilding the old world was not just a dream. It became reality. From that small village, the largest and most ambitious nation of the post-war era would rise, the new California Republic. This is the story of Shady Sands, from its desperate beginnings, through its transformation into a thriving city, and finally, into the beating heart of the Republic. Ashes of the old world. The land that would one day cradle Shady Sands had been farmland, even before the bombs. Northern California's interior valleys were rich in soil, and before the war, irrigated by rivers and aqueducts. When nuclear fire swept across the region, much of that infrastructure was destroyed. But the land itself was still arable. Though poisoned in places by fallout, enough patches of clean ground remained to support farming. This became the basis of survival. Shady Sands was not founded all at once, but rather grew from scattered survivors' families who banded together against raiders and starvation. By the time history first records the village, its leader was a man named Aradesh. His people lived in mud brick houses, practiced subsistence farming, and relied on spears and simple firearms for defense. They were not unique in the wasteland. What made Shady Sands different was what came next. The Vault Dweller and the Turning Point. In 2161, a traveler arrived at Shady Sands. He was known only as the Vault Dweller, a man sent from Vault 13 to find a replacement water chip. His appearance would forever change the fate of the settlement. At that time, Shady Sands was vulnerable. Raiders, particularly the Khans, preyed upon the village. Food was scarce. Disease was a constant threat. The Vault Dweller's visit left a deep mark. He not only defended Shady Sands against raiders, but also introduced them to more advanced techniques of agriculture, crop rotation, and irrigation that greatly improved their yields. The Vault Dweller's influence was personal as well. Aradesh's daughter, Tandi, was kidnapped by raiders and rescued by the Vault Dweller. That event etched itself into Shady Sands' memory, a moment when the settlement was reminded both of its fragility and its potential to endure. When the Vault Dweller departed, Shady Sands was no longer just a vulnerable village. It was a place with hope. Aradesh and the birth of community. Aradesh was no warlord. He believed survival depended not only on force, but on law and cooperation. Inspired partly by the Vault Dweller's example, he began shaping Shady Sands into something more permanent. He established rudimentary governance, organized farming collectives, and promoted the idea that Shady Sands could be more than just a cluster of survivors. It could be a community with rules, with shared responsibilities, and with a vision for the future. These were humble beginnings, but they mattered. Where other settlements lived day to day, Shady Sands began planning for years ahead. Tandi's long shadow. When Aradesh passed, leadership fell to his daughter, Tandi. At first, many underestimated her. She had been a frightened girl during the Vault Dweller's visit, but as the years turned, she proved herself a leader of extraordinary resilience. Tandy would live to be one of the oldest humans in the wasteland, ruling for over a century and serving as the spiritual mother of the Republic. Under her, Shady Sands expanded from village to town, from town to city, and eventually to capital. Her philosophy was simple, but radical for the wasteland. Humanity must not only survive, but also rebuild civilization. The republic she built was modeled on the pre-war United States, with elections, a senate, and a constitution. But its heart, the city where it all began, was always Shady Sands. The growth of a city. As Shady Sands prospered, its mud huts gave way to sturdier stone and brick buildings. Defensive walls were raised, markets grew, and caravans began to move through the settlement. Its fertile farms became the backbone of its wealth, supplying food not just to locals, but also to neighboring towns. By the time of Fallout 2, set in 2241, Shady Sands had transformed dramatically. Travelers described it as a thriving urban center, bustling with trade and governed by a functioning republic. The once humble fields had become the granary of a nation. Here, the Senate convened. Here, laws were drafted and enforced. And here, the dream of rebuilding civilization took shape. Shady Sands as capital. The decision to make Shady Sands the capital of the new California Republic was both practical and symbolic. Practically, it was centrally located among the NCR's early territories, Junktown, the hub, and other nearby settlements. Symbolically, it was the birthplace of the Republic itself, a living reminder of what humanity could achieve. Government buildings rose, from the presidential offices to the Senate chambers. Bureaucracy flourished, for better or worse. Merchants, politicians, and foreign envoys all walked the streets. But with prosperity came challenges. The city grew crowded. Corruption seeped into its politics, as wealthy Brahmin barons and merchant families exerted influence over senators. Taxes rose, discontent simmered. And yet, despite these flaws, Shady Sands remained the Republic's beating heart. To citizens across the NCR, the city was a symbol of pride, the place where civilization had truly been reborn. Shady Sands in the Mojave era. By 2281, during the events of Fallout New Vegas, Shady Sands was still the capital of the NCR. The Republic had stretched far beyond its original borders, reaching into Nevada, Arizona, and beyond. But the strain showed. NCR forces were bogged down in the Mojave, locked in a brutal struggle against Caesar's legion. At home, political corruption and economic disparity grew worse. Citizens grumbled that their sons were dying far from home, while taxes soared. Yet Shady Sands endured. Though never depicted directly in New Vegas, it is consistently referenced as the center of NCR politics and identity. President Aaron Kimball, himself a native of the core region, ruled from there, commanding armies hundreds of miles away. The decisions made in Shady Sands shaped not only the NCR, but the entire balance of power in the post-war West. The legacy of Shady Sands. What, then, is the legacy of Shady Sands? It is not a tale of perfection. The city birthed corruption as surely as it birthed democracy. Its leaders were not always noble, and its policies often crushed smaller communities beneath the weight of bureaucracy and taxation. But in a world where most survivors bowed to warlords or eked out lives in endless chaos, Shady Sands stood apart. From the simple farms of Aradesh to the bustling capital of Tandy's Republic, it represented something the wasteland had almost forgotten: the possibility of civilization. It was proof that humanity could do more than survive, it could rebuild. The town, that built a republic. Today, when NCR citizens look at the two-headed bear on their flag, they see not just a symbol of power, but also of origins. For behind that flag stands the memory of Shady Sands, the little village that grew into the heart of a nation.